Sean todos bienvenidos a la Universidad Francisco Marroquín, que es la Casa de la Libertad y que tiene a honra recibir la visita del ex primer ministro de Estonia, Mart Laar. Para la presentación de nuestro invitado, por favor recibamos al rector de la Universidad Francisco Marroquín, Giancarlo Ibargüen.
Muy buenos días, bienvenidos. La verdad que para la Universidad Francisco Marroquín es un verdadero honor contar con la presencia del doctor Martin Laar. Él es historiador, pero como ha dicho Ed Feldner, es tal vez el economista más famoso de entre los historiadores. Es alguien que ha implementado reformas económicas y políticas radicales, basadas en principios, y que creo que tiene algo que decirnos a todos los países que anhelamos el desarrollo. No les voy a hacer comentarios sobre su vida y milagros, ya que la van a encontrar en las páginas que tenemos enlazadas en la web de la universidad. Ustedes lo pueden buscar, pero sí quisiera hacer la siguiente reflexión. Como él ha sido en 2 ocasiones primer ministro de Estonia, y cuando él llegó al poder político recibía consejos de todas partes del mundo, especialmente instituciones como el Fondo Monetario Internacional, del Banco Mundial, y es una carrera que persiguen a todos los nuevos políticos. Y al igual que lo hiciera en alguna oportunidad Louis Erhard, después de la Segunda Guerra Mundial en Alemania, no le hizo caso a los asesores políticos. Erhard en aquella ocasión le preguntaron a los comandantes de las fuerzas aliadas que cómo era eso, que lo que estaba él implementando de reformas de libre mercado y de liberar los precios era una mala idea, y Erhard le contestaba al comandante: pues fíjese qué casualidad, porque mis asesores me dicen lo mismo, y de todas maneras él liberó los precios. El primer ministro Mart Laar, al doctor Laar, cuando le estaban dando alguna asesoría, le dijeron, se los voy a leer en inglés, le decían: what you're trying to do simply cannot be done. They said that it was impossible as walking on water. Y entonces la reflexión del doctor Laar fue: well, we just walked on water because we did not know that it was impossible. Y ese es el espíritu que lleva el doctor Laar a su trabajo, tanto académico como político. Recibámoslo con un fuerte aplauso, por favor.
Thank you for this introduction, and it's really a big honor, pleasure for me to be here today and speak to you about my country and these experiences, what we have in our way towards freedom. And I must again congratulate you on this university, which is so marvelous place to develop the ideas of liberty, which are most important ideas for the human beings. In Estonia, first to tell you where it lies, this is the country in the northern Europe between Russia and the Baltic Sea, and it's really very northern country, which means there is a lot of cold there. Some countries in the world, somebody says, have chosen by the God. We are frozen by the God there. So we are still competing with our Nordic neighbors, Finns, from where exactly the Santa Claus comes to you. So we are both having the Santa Claus villages and so on, what you can visit when you visit our countries. So, but it looks that as Finland is more in the north, near the North Pole, so they are winning this competition, unfortunately. But this geographical situation has really put us to in one way, very favorable situation, in the other way, the situation where we have situated on the border of the different civilizations, where by Samuel Huntington, the civilization clash. This you see the border river of Estonia with Russia. On one side, the former German castle, the Gothic, on the other side, the flat Russian castle. This as described by the Samuel Huntington as a symbol of the clash or differences between the Western and Eastern Russian cultures. This situation, of course, has made our history very interesting for historians. And when you live there, actually, you probably has wanted that you have lived in maybe not in so interesting country, because to have the interesting history means to have a lot of wars, a lot of different countries who invade you, because really everybody was interested in our country. From other point of view, it means a lot of trade. Estonia has been trading nation from the beginning of the history, because we just laid on the juncture of the different trade routes. Of course, at the same time, we have been very stubborn people, as we are Nordic individualists. So even when we were conquered by the different rulers, we kept our identity, we kept our nationality, and in 1918 we restored our independence. Unfortunately, this was not lasted too long, because in 1939-1940 the Nazi Germany and Communist Russia made a deal between each other to start the Second World War and to divide all countries between Russia and Germany between themselves. So we fell then victim of the Soviet aggression and occupation, and we were occupied by more than 50 years. Of course, we fought for our freedom. In these pictures you see the Estonian guerrilla fighters or partisans, or in Estonia how we called them forest brothers, who fought a long time partisan war against the Soviet communist invasion. This actively lasted more than 10 years, but the last Estonian forest brother was killed in action in 1978. This is actually 40 years after this, when the country was fully occupied. This man, they died, nearly all of them, but they kept the tradition of the resistance and saved the soul of Estonian people. Because even when they were destroyed and killed, and actually nobody in the world were very interested in their fight, it still created the basis for the continuing resistance movement, which lasted till the all Soviet time. Our losses were very hard. More than 30% of our population was repressed or arrested or sent to the Siberia, and direct losses were 20% of population as a result of the communist terror. So we know we are one of the nations which really knows what it means when you are not free and what it means to live under the totalitarian system. But as I said, we never gave up. We continued our political resistance, underground movements, underground magazines, underground leaflets, organization, political activities, demonstrations, and so on. And when the Soviet Union became weaker at the end of the 80s, when the West have won the Cold War and pressed the Soviet Union to the corner, then they had to start the reforms, forgetting one simple truth, that you actually couldn't reform communism. Every attempt to reform such a system ends with failure. And Mr. Gorbachev, who really thought that it will happen in another way, he tried to save both Soviet Empire and socialism, saw what will happen when you leave the democracy out to the people. Democracy, namely, is like a toothpaste. It's really easy to let out, but you couldn't put it back anymore. So we take the chance of the situation. We organized the massive rallies, massive movements, and even when we were still attacked and pressed by the Soviet tanks, what you see, the pictures from Lithuania from 1991, when the public demonstration was just pressed by the Soviet tanks, we have felt what the freedom is, what the liberty is, and we were not ready to give it away anymore. In 1991, when the Soviet Union collapsed, we really regained our freedom. This was a moment of joy, and this was a moment of big happiness. It looked that everything will now go well, and we will start to enjoy fast development. Unfortunately, only then we understood what the communism really has meant to our country, how down we really were, how undeveloped we were. When Estonia, before the occupation, was more or less in the same level in all social development, economical development, with our Nordic neighbor Finland, then with 50 years of occupation, Finland has passed us, not only in the economy. Finnish GDP was nearly 9 times higher as Estonian with these 50 years, but in all social development as well. But what the communism or leftist ideologies are doing, they are offering to the people the free healthcare, the free education, both of them in paper, and actually no development. The difference in all those standards between Estonia and Finland has grown tremendously, and as a result of this, we only saw the absolute collapse of the economy and also society, because through the violence, the communism has hidden these problems which really exist in economy, in environment, in public relations, and really the ruins. When we look on the reality in Estonia, this is the picture in 1992, you maybe don't understand what this is, but this is a normal Estonian food shop. The only thing which was available was the Russian vodka and Armenian brandy, and not very much more. All other foodstuff, the main foodstuff, was on the carts. When you wanted to have milk, you had to have at least 3 children to have it. And the situation was really very, very devastated. There was no gas, which means there was no cars in the street. Just now looking on Estonian capital, Tallinn, the people think maybe it was not so bad not to have cars at all, because by now there is too many of them. And there was really the massive poverty, growth in the social inequality, and so on, so on. When we are looking on the figures of Estonia in 1992, before we started our economic reform, we had inflation more than 1,000% in year, so the money didn't have very much value at all. We had economy going down by 30% during this year. We had unemployment prognosis on the 30 to the 40% of population getting unemployed in the next years. We were absolutely depending from Russia in our economy. 92% of our trade was with Russia, because no normal country wanted to buy these so-called goods what we produce, because they had such a low quality, and they were not competitive in the world markets. And as I said, we had really very bad situation in the social sphere, food rationed, poverty raising, all criminality raising, all diseases raising, and so on. So there was full collapse of the system. And that was the moment when, by some reason, Estonians decided to vote some bunch of the young reformers to lead the country. Probably this was the main reason, because nobody other wanted it, but still there was a lot of who ran for the office in 92, the first democratic elections. I happened to be in this time the young 32-year-old historian who have been participating in different resistance movements and in these liberation movements to get the Soviet Empire down. But I have never been very much interested in politics. I was a little bit interested, of course, in the history of economy, looking on the German economical miracle, Ludwig Erhard reforms. And actually I have read till this moment only one book on economy, and this was the Milton Friedman's Free to Choose. And that was it. But somehow, as I was put for my party to put together my party's economic reform program, so I just took a lot of ideas from this book, because they looked very reasonable for me. Because as one professor afterwards explained to me, the market economy is actually very simple, but these left-wing professors make it too complicated. And then we wrote all these ideas, moving away the custom tariffs, having the free trade, having the flat tax to our program, and we were not very sure what the people will think about this, especially as we had to run the political campaign where we didn't have any money to do this, but as my friends had most of the Estonian rock singers and punk singers and whomsoever, our very close friends. So they said that maybe we will organize just your campaign as a one big concert. And then we just made a lot of rock concerts, and in the meantime we talked a little bit about the politics, and then there was very active music. And somehow, with such a quite funny campaign, we moved in 3 months from the 6% support to the 25%, winning the election, which was quite a big surprise for all of us, not only for the Estonian public. And I must say it was not very funny to be, in one moment, to understand that you will become the Prime Minister of your country when you are 32 years old. We were all so young. My minister actually were even more younger. My Minister of Foreign Affairs was 27, my Minister of Interior was 26, my Minister of Justice was 27 too, so I was quite old man in the cabinet. And in the first international European meeting, on the OSCE meeting, the security didn't let us in because they say nobody from us looks like a prime minister. So this was, but afterwards they used with us. And when we were in such a desperate situation, there was two options left for us. One was what was offered by the different foreign advisors, mostly from the so-called developed Western countries, and who said, be now careful. You see, everything is so down. Everything is so bad, your social situation has really deteriorated. Move slowly, take the reasonable steps. And when I started to talk to them about Milton Friedman, they said, no, please, don't do this. This only exists in the book. Nobody has tried it. And when they have tried, they have failed. It will never work, it's not possible, don't do such stupid things. But it looked something, I didn't trust this advice very much, because especially when you are young, then you don't listen very much what the older people are saying to you. You are having your own mind, and it's very hard to change it. So we didn't change our mind very much. We decided actually that when we want to get this country out of this situation, we really need very radical reforms. We didn't think very much on our own political future. When you are 32 years old, you don't think that you will stay all your life or be part of the life in the politics. You want to do your job and leave. That was the philosophy, because we understood that these reforms, what we will do, this will be quite unpopular in the beginning, and which means that you can do this fast. And the first, actually, what we thought is important to do is really not to be afraid. Because when you are in such a situation, the only way how this puppy survives is that she is not afraid. Immediately when you try to run, then you are catched and killed by these big bad dogs. So first of all, don't be afraid, really do the necessary things, do the radical reforms, don't look on the piecemeal solutions, because the piecemeal solutions are unpopular as well. So there is not so that every decision is always unpopular. And it's not very big difference actually in the political unpopularity, is this small decision or is this big decision. They are unpopular in the same way. So that's better do the big decisions. And the other thing what we learned is that you must really have such of goals which are impossible, because to using the normal tools you couldn't get out of this situation. So the next lesson is that you must aim high. Because when you are not aiming high in such a desperate situation, you will be in something which I don't want to mention very much. And that was the two basics on which we started to base our reforms. Really have the radical approach, do the things, deliver, and then when your time is over, you can just go and look how your country is moving forward. So we started the reform process, and as a result of these reforms, Estonia has really become the so-called model of success, or success story, or Estonian miracle, when you look on the international press or international magazine or analysts, they are all referring to the Estonian very positive experience on the economical and political reforms. The first reform which was done soon before actually my government took office was monetary reform to stabilize the monetary system, to fight down the inflation and create the basis for the economy. We created the currency board system, which is very tough, which is not giving very much room for the government to do the popular decisions, but which creates a stable currency. Of course, the currency board itself, which mostly in the first case is really fights down the inflation, what the currency board in Estonia did. We backed our currency with the D-mark, then which was quite a good decision because it proved to be the most stable currency in Europe. And at the same time, this is a very crucial mistake when the politicians start to think that the successful monetary reform, especially when it's based on the currency board, will be enough. It will be not enough. Immediately when the governments are not continuing the reforms after it, it will fail, and it will fail very badly. Because when the currency board fails, then it's very bad failure. Because the government is not having enough tool to avoid the failure. Which means it demands a lot of decisiveness from the government to do the reforms and to keep the budget under the control. When you are not stabilizing the budget under this system, you will be gone. And when you are not doing the next level of reforms, your budget will be not stabilized for the long run. So this was the first basics, and we understood that it's really necessary now to continue with the full speed, and this was the good decision. Of course, it was easy to say, but hard to do, because we had to really do the reforms which were not popular. First of all, we had to open the economy, to create the competition in Estonia, because all those Soviet-fashioned, old, very unfunctional companies, they have used that the state will always become a help to them. When they are in trouble, they will get some subsidy, they get some support, because they say otherwise we will go down. I kicked them all out and said to them, you will now have two choices, or start to produce something what you can sell, or die. And I must say, most of them in this situation prefer start to work. And this is the only competition, and really open competition, what pressed them to do. And to really abolish all custom tariffs is a very good thing for this. Estonia really became one big free trade area, and as we are not having our own national resources, this brought a lot of investments and a lot of really good development into Estonia. Of course, it was not popular, because the farmers said that I will destroy the Estonian farming or Estonian agriculture. Actually, the exact opposite has happened. Estonian farmers are the most competitive and aggressive now in the whole area, not only having their own land cultivated, but buying the land massively in other two Baltic countries and in Ukraine now, because they have not done such of reforms and not got such of competitiveness. Or in the industry, which said that now everything will go down, and the opposite, they got new investments, they had to reconstruct and build up the modern industries which can really export something to the West. The next step was really to introduce the rule of law, because this has been one mistake in a lot of reforming countries, that they underestimate the importance of the independent court system, the rule of law, and all to connecting to this in this reform process. Without rule of law, it will be very hard to protect the property rights, or not possible at all, and at the same time the property rights and support and protection of the property rights is the most important part of the market economy. When you are underestimating this, we can say very boring, very technical reforms. It's one of the biggest mistakes. And when you are studying why some countries in Central and Eastern Europe have failed, some of them very badly in the reforms, the underestimation of this part of the reform process has been very often the reason. So, of course, this creating the really working law system or judiciary system, it's not happened with 1 year. So which means you must start immediately, because it takes time. And at the same time, you must concentrate on this part of the reforms which are supporting your economical development. This is mostly the property registration, which must be specially developed and specially supported. And then you can go to the privatization. Where your property relations are not clear, the privatization can turn against it. It can be very Clooney, very criminal process, which will not help the country, and just move your state assets to the hands of the bunch of criminals which actually don't know what to do with them. That has happened in some countries as well. But when you're basing your privatization on the rule of law and the Grail principles, then actually that's very necessary and very, very positive step forward, because the governments couldn't run the businesses. The businesses must do that themselves. It's a waste of money, it's a waste of time, it's a waste of resources, because the private business can do most of these things significantly better. So we have had in Estonia very fast privatization, at the same time trying to really get the population with. It means that in a lot of cases we privatized for the one core owner the majority of the shares, but we privatized to the people, or we shared the so-called privatization vouchers to the people, to making the people owners of the minority shares of the companies, which was a very clever thing to do. First of all, it took down a lot of political pressure on the privatization, and the other thing, it created owners. And to create the owners is one big important part of the reform. When the people understand that they own something, like this is in the property, or this is the shares of the companies, their way of how they think will change, and change to the very positive direction. They will feel more responsible for their own future. They understand what's happening in economy, and actually it will be very good base for economy to develop. But only to rely on the voucher privatization can lead to the other problems, which means you must have the core investor who really does the investments and will develop this industry. This is an important part to remember as well. And of course, then it became the tax revolution, because when you have then most of the economy in the private hands, then it will start works or not, and it depends what business conditions the governments have created. Is the government supporting the good business climate or not? And one of things is, in this is such a psychological thing, is the government really punishing the people who are more successful or more working as another? When we had this unemployment prognosis on the 30%, and it really became true because most of these big enterprises went down, then it was very important to support the development of small and medium businesses. And when these small and medium businesses understand that the tax system is such that when I start to work more, I will be taken away more, this is actually not what encouraged them to invest and work. And that's one reason why we introduced this system in the beginning, to really encourage the investments and activity of the people. And the results actually of this system was a little bit even surprise for ourselves, because everybody told us don't do it. They said that we will lose such an amount of money that the budget will go to the deficit, it will not work, and we made then the very kind of calculation, even from our point of view positive, that we will earn, with taking the taxes down to the flat level, we will earn more or less the same amount of money in the first budget year as we earned in the year before, calculating that the people are just getting more active, and when the economy are starting to grow and we have less unemployment, we will get just through this the more money. So we take that it will more or less earn it back with the first year. Or when there will be losses, they will be not big. And actually we were very wrong, because we gathered 30% more taxes. This was a big surprise, and I must say it has happened with nearly every country who have introduced a flat tax. All the calculations, especially when they are done by the IMF and World Bank, they have always proved to be wrong, because the power of the flat tax is higher as the people expect. It's due not on the economical activity so much in the first year, but it really kills the grey sector in your economy. really there will be a lot of more people to pay, honestly, the taxes as you have had before. And namely from these people, actually, this surprise income in most countries are coming. Because the flat tax is, one of its best parts is it's very simple, which means it's very simple to understand, and people are more eager to pay the taxes when they understand what this tax is. But what is other most important part, it's very simple to collect, and it's very hard to avoid. And through this, actually, as in most economies, the analysts underestimate the size of the grey economy in this economy which is studied. The size, through this size, or taking this size down, actually a lot of more money will be collected to the revenues as expected. And what's most important, it boosts the growth. When you are comparing the countries, even in the Central and Eastern Europe, in the same region, with all the same conditions, the countries who introduced the flat tax, they just started to move faster. It's sometimes, again, very hard to explain why it exactly happened, but it's a law. We have now nearly 12 countries in the region moved to the flat tax, and all of them had exactly the same results. All of them started to move faster. Because, as I said, my logical explanation, like the Milton Friedman gives it, the people are just becoming more initiative. They are becoming more creative. This is a tax system which is not the Marxist one, because where the progressive taxation is coming, you must remember that in the Communist Manifesto of Karl Marx there was two main economic demands. The first was to take away all property. Now this in the Western countries is not very recognized, but the second was soon the progressive taxation. So this is the interesting part looking to the modern world, when even the quite conservative or right-wing politicians are explaining that the progressive taxation is a very good thing, don't even remembering that actually they are basing their calculation on the Karl Marx Communistic Manifesto. So we have in one way destroyed the communists, but we are still trying to keep some part of this heritage, which is not most practical thing to do. And through all this, of course, what has happened in Estonia, we created a lot of owners, and we got our country changed beyond recognition. When you're looking or somebody is visiting Estonia now, who visited Estonia in the beginning of 90s, they don't know the city. The city and all the Estonia has changed so much. It really has become one of the such of vivid, very modern economies, moving very fast forward, and all the attitudes of the people is changed. And all the outlook of country has changed. In the most part of my life, I have lived, in, as I said, under the communist occupation, and it was, in this sense, very depressing time, because with every year you saw how the things are getting bad, how something is falling down, how something is destructed, something is destroyed, something is disappearing. So you saw all the negative news. Every year something changed, but to the more bad direction. Now during the last 15 years I have really been a happy man, because I have seen with every month or with every day how much country changed to the better position. So that's a really very nice experience, and it has created a lot of happiness in Estonian people. Estonia, by the Index of Economical Freedom made by Heritage Foundation and Wall Street Journal, is one of the most free countries economically in the world, and one of the most free in Europe. And when some analysts just try to put together all different lists of freedom, this is a press freedom, Amnesty International list, the corruption index, and so on, and economical freedom Estonia was found that we are the most free country in the world, which can be true, because we are not maybe the best in any of this category, but we were everywhere in some 5th, 6th, 7th position, which altogether made us really the country of free. And this country of free, when you are using your liberty, when you're using your freedom, your results of your development are very fast. Estonian growth has been very stable and very high during the last 10-15 years. In 2005 it was little bit over the 10%. It will become even bigger in 2007. Last quarter it was 12%, by example. We are not depending from the Russia anymore. All our trade is with the world markets where we are competing, and most of our trade is the high-tech industry products or machinery. We are having low unemployment or nearly not existing employment at all anymore, so we are hiring the labor power from the neighboring countries. We have balanced budget, or this is the philosophy what we introduced. Actually, the only problem with the flat tax is that it earns too much money to your budget. So we are not having actually balanced budget, we have strongly surplus budget. In this year it will go surplus by the 6% of the GDP. This is a very big part actually, and sometimes the governments really don't know what to do with the money when they have too much of it, and they can try to do the stupid decisions. So this is the only bad part what I see in the flat tax, because it's really very effective and it collects a lot of money. Even when you decrease the rates, it nevertheless collects a lot of money. And as a result of this, we had, of course, very positive social development. That the poverty has gone down massively, the social inequality has gone down massively, and all other social standards, the life, how long the people are living, or how healthy they are, or how educated they are all got higher and higher. So there are really positive changes. And at the same time, we know in Estonia that when we want to be successful in the future, we must orientate on a lot of future economies too. And one part what we are now, during the last year, concentrated is really e-government, e-Estonia. Estonia has made a very fast progress in the development of internet. We were absolutely down when we became independent, even in the telephone system, but from this we have developed the first real e-government in the world, which is working without papers. Then you see the cabinet room, which has been described as a Starship Enterprise commando point, and really you are getting not only government working very fast, very effectively, but it's making the government work very transparent. In Estonia, every decision which is made in the government is in the 20 seconds in electronic press release room, when it's open for the people. The budget can be followed online by every person. So when this was in the beginning a lot of scandals, when our journalists started to find that some state officials used their state credit cards in some squash clubs and in some other clubs, which I don't want to mention. And of course there became a lot of scandals, and those people are not working anymore in the state administration. But it has trained to all, even the budget, to be very transparent and very open to the people, because when you open this using this modern technology, then you are really getting a lot of paper out. It's good for environment and for the good rainforest not to use such of amount of paper anymore, but it's really making the people very knowledgeable in the internet. And when the people are knowledgeable in the internet, you can offer a lot of services to them. We are having introduced electronic ID card for Estonia, and as a supporting to this, we have had the first e-elections in the world, which means that there's not e-elections that you will go to some poll station and push some screen, but you can vote from home via online. We just had the last autumn elections, which were very successful, and of course some political parties don't like it too much, because they said this is how this ID card looks like, because in the elections, when the young people got a chance to vote more actively and using this internet, of course the elections in the internet elections were very different from the old country elections, because the young people supported the liberal ideas and not such of left-wing politicians. This was very clear development, and of course now we will run to the next parliament elections as e-elections as well. We haven't introduced e-health system, e-driving license, which is on the same card. You can buy or sell, you can use this as a tickets in the public transportation and so on. So you can do really miraculous, take down the costs offer better services and doing in the most transparent way. And all of this, as I said, of course, has led to the very fast development of Estonian IT industry. I think in the room are people who are using the Skype communication system. It was made in Estonia, its technological center is in Estonia, and it was just voted by the world the third most impressive new innovation or trademark. And of course the same guys who are very young, the first project what they made was what you probably know as well, which is not so good project for the Hollywood, it's the Gaza operation system. That's how they started. And then they moved to a little bit more peaceful areas to the telecommunication. And this is only one of them. The Estonia is full of the new internet developers, the companies who are going to the London Stock Exchange and so on with their innovations and with their basics. So when you are developing such of areas and internet, you're not getting your country more transparent, but you're getting quite modern economy developing this kind of economy what you will need to be competitive in the 21st century. Of course, looking on all this and a lot of other reforms what were done in Estonia, you maybe think that the politicians who did this become very popular. This is not so. At the end, all of them, you are nailed from all possible sides, because every decision what you do is actually hurting somebody, and when you do a lot of decisions, then nearly everybody is hurted by your government. But this is not important, because the government, it's not necessary for the governments to be popular. This is not government tasks. Government task is to do the job. And the best thing what can happen to the government is to see in the opinion polls that the people don't like very much the government, but they like the direction where the country is going. Then you have done a good job. I'm a little bit afraid of the governments which become too popular, because this means that they are not concentrating on this, what they must do, this is on decision making, but they are just concentrating on the popular or populist politics, which is not helping your country forward. Because I really don't understand why my colleagues sometimes in the politics don't understand that in a democratic system you will be once ousted anyway. It's not important, are you doing reforms or are you not doing reforms? You will be gone anyway. It's not, there is no evidence that when you are not doing anything, there are sitting just 4 years, then you will be elected back. No, there are same chances to be elected back. Are you done something or not? In my case, actually, there are significantly better chances because I have done something. And I am the only Prime Minister in Central and Eastern Europe who have been elected back to the office. And the people really, it's not necessary that they like your personality, but they know that you can do something, and it's important that the government will really encourage such of activity in the people, making it clear that this is not the government who is running this country, this is the people who are running this country. And the government task is only to create this condition for the people to be active, to really realize their dreams. Because as it was said to me, as it was mentioned in the introduction, you couldn't walk in the water. It's absolutely true. Nobody from us can walk in the water. But when you have dreams, when you have courage, where you don't think too much what is possible and what is not possible, then you can actually do the miracles. Because this lizard doesn't know that you couldn't walk in the water. So did this, he does it, and this way is open for all of us. We must have courage to have the dreams, and then to have courage to realize these dreams. Then we can do the miracles for ourselves and for our country, and really this is what all of us can do. Thank you.
Mr. Laar, what have you done in Estonia Estonia to lock in these reforms so that future politicians don't come in and restore to the older or more socialist system?
I think that's the most important question, because the only way to see are the reforms really successful is to see are they lasting after you. Because as I said, once we will be ousted. And in Estonian case, there were two main things what we did. First of all, of course, you must bolster all your reforms with the laws. Because when they are just some administrative measures what you have used, then it's very easy to change. When you have laws, it's always a little bit more complicated to change in the parliament. It demands some work. And the most left politicians don't like to work. So they are lazy people, at least in my part of the world. The other thing, which is even more important, is that you must do your reforms fast when you come to the power. There is no time to waste, because that's the only chance that they start to work in the practice. Because when they start to work, then actually nobody will change it. On the Estonian flat tax, it was massive, it was absolute, it was very unpopular when I introduced it. There was a massive political fighting against it. The leader of opposition, who was the most popular politician in this time, and probably next prime minister, he declared that the first thing when he will come to the prime minister position, the first thing is to remove this stupid tax reform. And by the irony of the history, after a year and a half, he became the prime minister. And he didn't change anything. Because why to kill such a system which is really producing such of results? And this is the same in all reforms. When you really can see that they are working, and the people will start then to like them actually. And especially when you're left-wing politicians, then it's very simple then to sit down, do nothing, and try to be popular, because everything is moving quite well, or it looks that it's moving quite well. And that is maybe the one biggest advice: when you do reforms, do them fast. That's politically, it's even harder, of course, to do the reforms after some time when you have been in power, but to make them last after you, it's important that the results will come so quickly as well, because no reform will work immediately. They all demand some time. And the people and the politicians must see that they are having practical results. And so we have had, after me, I think all possible government coalition in Estonia. A lot of them have came to the power with the slogans to change everything what I have done. I'm saying nothing has been changed. Sometimes it even worries me, because in 15 years your system needs some changes, but it looks as we are coming back in the next elections, then we have now possibility to change it again, or to modernize it, not to change it. Because you must always look where the world is going, and to think what you can do to be there faster, especially as for such a smaller countries as Estonia is, and Guatemala is quite small too. There's a big advantage to be small. We can change faster. We can do the things which for the bigger economies and bigger countries is not possible. So we must only use this advantage well.
Mr. Laar, in your experience with advising Latin American governments, what do you think are the main obstacles that are keeping us from becoming tigers ourselves?
I think there are a lot of, first of all, when I'm advising some government, I always say that listen to my advice and then think with your own head. Because any foreign advisor can know exactly your situation or your context. And you must really look on all the reforms and all how they work, and then think how they can work in your country, and to really to do it in your own way. This is the first thing. The second, which I think is the obstacle, is the main in the political thinking. That really the politicians want to too much stay in power. And they really think that they can stay in power doing nothing. And I think this is the biggest obstacle. I have, and in some countries which have moved from the totalitarian system to the democracy or to the more market-oriented system, the people don't understand that you must really clean the place from these former more totalitarian type politicians. You must really have the administration which works and which is not corrupted. And this is sometimes only possible when you really clean the place. You couldn't put the new wine to the old sacks. it's said in the Bible. So. And this is very often forget for the democratical parties when they come to the power. And I have at least know one country in your neighborhood who did this bad mistake not doing this. And has been not too successful in the reforms, even as the political change happened. And very concrete advice, of course, in Latin America. I have been always wondered why the countries here are not going so well till I read the Soto. Because I'm not expert in your area. And I think this is one thing which is maybe in your area the most important to develop. Without this, without the property regulation, because there are really property claims, without having the clear property rights, it's very hard to build the market economy. Or it's nearly impossible.
Mr. Laar, I'm a Mexican and I'm a district professor here in Guatemala. I would like to ask you, have you thought or have you been invited to talk with President-elect Calderón? Because I think that your experience could be very important for Mexico.
Some of my Mexican friends who are fought for the Calderón campaign have soon done it, yes. And I have met with the former President Fox advisors too as well. But I must say the Calderón program is a really good chance for Mexico. The question is, can he really implement it? Or will he have courage and strength to do this, what he has promised? When this program will be realized, I think the Mexico can go very fast forward. But of course, looking on the current situation in Mexico, it's very hard to say, and it's not, unfortunately, 100% depends from the president by now. But of course, very soon has been, some people have turned to me to come when the political situation a little bit calms down and to look what is possible to do.
Muchas gracias, señor primer ministro. Estoy seguro de que sus experiencias políticas y económicas van a ser de mucha inspiración y de mucho ánimo para nosotros. Ahora quiero invitar al rector de la universidad porque he's going to present you.
I'd like to present to you on behalf of the Board of Directors of the Universidad Marroquín this diploma that reads to Dr. Mart Laar in recognition for his conferences on the political and economic reforms in Estonia. And the board names you visiting professor of Universidad Marroquín.
Thank you.
I will make public the invitation. Since Dr. Laar is thinking about going back to politics or staying in academia, we told him that he has an open door to come to this academia, and he can stay for as long as he wants. And we're also presenting you with the UFM, the Marroquín tie. It has the Marroquín emblem, yes, which says truth, liberty, and justice, and we hope that you wear it proudly. Thank you very much for all your